Welcome everyone to the June 9th, 2022 meeting of the Haverford Township Planning Commission. Marge, would you call roll, please?
Mr. Capuzzi?
Present.
Mr. Channon? Present. Ms. Dobbs? Present. Mr. Fioradomundo? Present. Mr. Garrett?
Present.
Ms. Phillips? Present. Mr. Montresor?
Present.
Okay, I'd like to ask everyone to stand and join me in Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. It's a pleasure to see so many new faces in the audience. We usually don't have a crowd this big, and it's nice to see everyone come out to help us through this journey in developing a new comprehensive plan for the township. I would guess that a lot of you have never been here before to a planning commission meeting, so I thought it'd be appropriate if we took a few minutes to introduce ourselves and let you know what it is that we do. And Julie, could you go first, please?
I'm Julia Phillips. I'm a registered architect and was lead accredited professional for new construction and major renovation.
My name is Rob Fioradomundo. I'm an architect licensed in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. I'm also the Deputy Director of Contract Management for the state of New Jersey.
My name is Maggie Dobbs. I'm a professional planner, and I work in government administration for a municipality in Chester County. So planning and land use is what I do in my professional life and as a volunteer.
My name is Angelo Capuzzi. I'm a retired professional civil engineer and land surveyor, and I have a few years of experience in land development aspects of subdivisions and such.
My name is David Channon. I'm an attorney. I'm also vice chairman of the Planning Commission. I'm an attorney with the Klein Bard firm in Philadelphia. And I've been on the Planning Commission initially for an interim term of approximately 2 years and now appointed to a 4-year term.
My name is Lou Montresor. I'm a semi-retired attorney. For many years, I practiced law. Also did volunteering in our school district, and currently I'm largely involved with instructing and coaching youth baseball, as well as serving as a judge of elections.
My name is Jack Garrett. I'm a design and construction consultant in the Philadelphia region for institutional and primarily nonprofit clients. And I've been on the Planning Commission for, I think, 3 years now. And I also serve as the liaison for the Historical Commission.
I'm Kelly Kirk. I'm the Township Zoning Officer and Community Planner. I have been with the Township since actually 20 years last month.
My name's Chuck Faulkner. I'm with Pannoni Associates. We're the Township Engineer.
Don't be shy, Brian.
I am Brian Barrett. I'm the Director of Parks and Recreation for Haverford Township.
Okay, the comp plan was developed, it's been a working project for the last couple of years. I think we had an 18-month hiatus during COVID, but for the last year or so, we've been working very diligently on the project. We've been meeting month to month, and the plan was developed basically by a steering committee that was established by the township. And I think it might be worthwhile for you to know who was on the steering committee. The committee included 4 township commissioners, former First Ward Commissioner Steve D'Amelio, 3rd Ward Commissioner Kevin McCluskey, 6th Ward Commissioner Larry Holmes, and 8th Ward Commissioner Dr. Jerry Hart. Along with those 4, Kelly Kirk, the Township Zoning Officer, was a member. Brian Barrett was a member. Donald Kelly, who's a member of the Board of Directors of Discover Haverford, which is formerly HPED, Haverford Partnership for Economic Development. Kathy Case, who is a member of the Township's Historic Commission. Rich Kerr, who is a member of the Township's Historical Society, and myself. And bringing us all together was Charlie Schmale. Charlie is the president of Urban Research and Development. His company was hired by the township to guide us through this process. And Charlie's graciously agreed to give us a summary of the major recommendations listed in the draft comp plan. And hopefully he'll be outlining the next steps which will be taken to the path on the final adoption of the comp plan by the Board of Commissioners. Charlie?
Thank you. Glad everybody could make it here tonight. I think you have the most highly credentialed municipal planning commission I've ever worked with. Again, my name's Charlie Schmale. We're going to go through a presentation and then we'll open it up for your questions and comments. There are copies of a summary over by the table there, and we'd also ask you to please sign in, which will help with the minutes too. Give me a second here to figure out where the page down is. Okay. So the comprehensive plan is an overall set of policies for the development and preservation of the township over the next 15 years. The plan is not a regulation by itself, but it provides the foundation for the regulations. It provides the justification, the analysis, and the support for development regulations of the township. It is based upon a lot of background information. Some of that mapping is up here in front. There's much more in the plan, looking at existing conditions. And then the plan, in addition to looking at land use and housing, it also looks at transportation issues, community facilities and services, natural feature preservation, and economic development issues and ways to carry out the plan. The plan is working at coordinating land use with transportation to avoid traffic problems, avoiding conflicts between different types of land uses, protecting residential neighborhoods, avoiding nuisances and hazards, looking at things in a more comprehensive manner as opposed to individual projects coming before the township at any one period of time, looking at what natural features are most worthy of preservation, and then the plan also is helpful in obtaining state grants. There was a citizen survey that was completed. We had really good high response rate. As Angela said, there's been a committee working very hard on this process. We had a Zoom public meeting and an in-person public meeting a few months ago with, again, very good participation at both. There were interviews conducted of many people. As far as next steps, there will be at least one more public meeting on the plan, which will be held by the Board of Commissioners. And then before there would be any zoning changes, there would be one or two additional public meetings required for those zoning changes. So this is not your last chance to comment by any means. And there's an email address where you can most easily provide comments. So again, the survey was conducted. We got 3,600 responses. It's no surprise the number one issue was reducing traffic congestion. Environmental sustainability was number 2. Flooding and stormwater, number 3. Attracting businesses to older commercial areas was number 4. Bicycling and pedestrian improvements was 5. Historic sites was 6. Providing additional parking in commercial areas was 7. And improving transit was the 8th. For the people up here on the board, it might be easiest if you look at those screens, but it's your choice. You might get less of a crick of your neck, that's all. And then we were asked people what types of new businesses they felt would be emphasized in the future. Restaurants was number 1, small retail, arts and entertainment, research and tech, daycare, and then there was less interest in, for instance, large retail and offices. What types of housing? We typically get single-family detached houses as being the #1 preference in any survey. Townhouses was 2, housing for persons 55 and older, twin homes, assisted living, personal care, and apartments above businesses were some of the more highly ranked housing types. Parks and recreation improvements. The township is working right now on a new parks and recreation and open space plan. Paths and trails was #1, restroom buildings, an outdoor amphitheater, children's playground, water spray area, and natural study areas all ranked highly. So this is an example of some of the maps that were completed. This is a map of existing natural features. And then if you have a copy of the summary brochure, it describes all of the different land use categories. Now, this is not a revolutionary change from what currently exists for a few reasons. One is, of course, most of the townships developed, but also in the survey, most people were very happy with their neighborhood. Their main complaint was speeding of traffic, some unsafe traffic conditions, but most people spoke very favorably of their own neighborhood and their own neighbors. The survey did say, though, was a lot of people saying they wanted a wider range of commercial businesses in town. They wanted additional commercial services, and they wanted more of a center. They wanted more of a sense of place in Haverford. And many people complained about the commercial portion of Eagle Road. They just didn't like it the way it was for multiple reasons. So with that in mind, the committee emphasized some of these issues as being some of the primary concerns. So we put a lot of attention on the commercial part of Eagle Road, on the Oakmont, the commercial part of Haverford Road, and then I raised an issue about the long-term future of Lanark Country Club. Across the country, we're seeing many country clubs proposed for development. Nothing's proposed there at this country club. But we need to think long-term, and we need to think of an alternative that if part of it or all of it would ever be proposed for development, that we're prepared with what might happen with that land. So here's the comprehensive plan map. There's also a paper copy up here, and then comparison to the current zoning. And this map is also in your summary brochure. Most of the categories simply reflect current zoning and current land use. We did propose to try to simplify some of your development regulations. There's too many zoning districts unnecessarily, too many that are similar to each other. So trying to streamline the process would be very helpful. So just because there's a proposal for a zoning update, we should not think that everything's going to be made stricter. There should be some things that should be made more permissive, more flexible for the types of development that the township wishes to encourage. And some of that can be done through merging zoning districts together. So of the areas that are most subject to change, there's a few. Whoops. Eagle Road and Oakmont is a real problem. We have problems with severe traffic congestion, bad pedestrian access, generally an unattractive corridor, an opportunity for additional investment and additional business opportunities for people, and it doesn't fit into the town. It sticks out. It could be a much more attractive and convenient commercial corridor. So the goal is to try to recreate some of the best features of older commercial corridors through redevelopment options and alternatives. We're not proposing any condemnation. That was one of the fear of some of the previous plans. This plan does not propose any condemnation, any use of eminent domain. But we are proposing to use options, flexibility, and incentives to promote redevelopment. So one of those goals is to encourage land assembly. There's too many driveways, And those driveways not only contribute to the traffic congestion, but they also make the sidewalks hard for people with strollers and wheelchairs because there's an up and down and up and down. By promoting land assembly, we can have larger projects that could be mixed use. As an example on the screen of a first floor commercial with upper story apartments, which is a very common type of development pattern you see throughout the region, very successful development pattern. The building placed relatively close to the street with parking to the rear side of the building. Commercial would have to be on the first floor facing the street. The types of commercial uses would be limited to types that are good neighbors for the housing above and the housing behind and to the south and north of the corridor, which we really want to protect. So again, we're talking about retail stores, restaurants without drive-throughs, daycare, personal services, offices, and related uses that fit into a neighborhood commercial type of corridor. There's no housing allowed right now in this corridor. So the opportunity for upper story residential would be an incentive to promote the redevelopment. In Oakmont, most people are very happy with most of Oakmont. There is a desire in our discussions to have a better special event space, possibly with a gazebo that could help support concerts. That would be used in combination with occasional closing of the street, as is done now on weekend special events. The traffic congestion is a serious problem, and pedestrian safety is a severe concern in Oakmont that needs to be addressed. But as part of that, ideally, one or two of the one-story modern commercial uses could be acquired in order to provide for some special event space. We didn't pick one out because we didn't want the owner of a property to fear that we were coming after them, because we're not. But you can imagine what types of properties would be best for that redevelopment. The future use... You're talking about Darby Road? Yes, Darby Road, the western leg of Darby Road, near the triangle.
Just, you said Oakmont, I just wanted to make sure you meant the Darby Road.
Yeah, I'd look at the whole triangle as Oakmont, but yeah, the southern part of the triangle.
Thank you.
As part of this initiative too, the goal is to look at possibly we can widen some sidewalks, provide some opportunity for some outdoor cafes on part of the western leg of Darby Road, extend some of the streetscape improvements to the south. People really like this area of town, and we can build upon it. The future use of the township building, the former township building, will need to be decided at some point. There's a series of alternatives discussed in the plan. One would be to look for an anchor mixed-use project, first floor commercial upper story apartments that would help to have a customer base for some of the local businesses. Another alternative would be to eventually support a parking deck as additional commercial activity is attracted, again with first floor commercial, or sometimes they build wraparound apartments around the parking deck. A third option would be to try to reuse the existing building, but there are a lot of difficulties and limitations in that regard. So again, looking at these neighborhood commercial residential areas, some of the points I've just raised are up on the screen. Shared parking should be encouraged through incentives, but not mandated. One of the previous plans tried to pretty much force people into shared parking, and there was a kickback to that concept. So we can have reduced parking standards if there's shared parking across lot lines in between uses. Again, Oakmont, working on promoting commercial with upper story residential, and looking at the use of the township building. Haverford Road is probably the most congested segment in the town. PennDOT is actively planning on a realignment of the road. converting one of the through lanes to an alternating turn lane, right turn lane at some places, left turn lane at other places. And their traffic studies show that even though there would be one less through lane, it would have a much smoother traffic flow at a constant speed. There would be less stopping and starting, which is what's the main contributor to the congestion, and the backups at the intersections is they find is the biggest contributor to the congestion. So that will be a major help. Once we have a smoother traffic flow, it will be easier to have other improvements along the corridor. The current zoning and part of the corridor is extremely restrictive, and the types of commercial uses that are allowed unnecessarily restrictive. We're assuming that the western part of Haverford Road, south of Ardmore Junction, would remain commercial, but the eastern side, which is up against housing, could be, again, first floor commercial with some upper story residential option. It certainly would be great to finish the sidewalk system where it doesn't exist, particularly on the west side, or have some other provisions for pedestrians and make it easy for people to get to the transit stations. And land assembly, again, would really help reduce the number of driveways, help the traffic flow, and help the sidewalk situation. Almost done here. Historic preservation. Haverford has a good set of zoning provisions addressing historic preservation. You have 134 designated buildings in which the township has to approve any demolition or any removal of architectural features. We're suggesting the township look at adding some incentives that would allow some additional uses in a historic building, a designated historic building, if it's sensitively rehabilitated. Many communities do this. They allow, for instance, an office in a designated historic building in a residential area. Particularly former churches, former schools, similar institutional buildings, you might look at adding some flexibility to give the zoning hearing board the ability to approve different types of adaptive reuses and modifications and standards without always requiring a variance. And we'd like to hear your questions and comments. Oh, I should mention one other point, or a couple other points. Next steps. The Planning Commission will have the opportunity to make any recommended changes tonight after hearing the public input. We'll go to the County Planning Department for review and adjacent municipalities in the school district for review. Then we will ask the Planning Commission to recommend it to the Board of Commissioners. Board of Commissioners will hold a meeting very similar to this one. They can make changes in response to the comments they hear, and then it can be adopted. And then we would recommend the township move into a zoning update to carry out the policies. One other land use change I should have highlighted. Up in the northeast corner, here you see Lancaster Avenue. You see Polo Field. Dayton Road is a residential street that is between Polo Field, Penn Street, and Old Lancaster Road. The recommendation there to protect that set of homes is to be more careful about the types of commercial uses along that frontage on the west side of Lancaster Avenue. Right now, it allows general commercial highway-oriented uses. So you can put in gas stations, convenience stores, drive-through restaurants, all kinds of very intensive commercial uses. And in respect of the character of that part of Lancaster Avenue and in respect of the homes that are right behind those commercial lots, we're recommending that go to a neighborhood commercial category, which would be more restrictive in the types of intensive commercial uses allowed on that side of Lancaster Avenue. And I'll now turn it over to Angelo for your questions and comments.
Thank you, Charlie. Before we start taking public comments, I want to set up a few simple rules for tonight's meeting. Number one, I want you to be aware that this meeting is being telecast live to thousands of homeowners in Haverford Township.
And recorded.
It's being recorded too, so take that under advisement when you get up to the speaker stand. When you address the board, please give us your full name and address. And if you're representing a group or a neighborhood, please mention the name of the group that you're representing. In order to give everyone a chance to speak, I'd like you to try to keep your comments to about 3 minutes if possible. I just want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to speak tonight who wants to speak. I'm not trying to cut you short. I just want to make sure everybody has an opportunity. And finally, if someone has stole your thunder, so to speak, please get up and say, I agree with what was said, or I disagree with what was said, but don't be afraid to come up and give us your opinion, even though someone may have already given us a comment that you agree with. And finally, I just want to iterate, the Planning Commission is not taking any formal action on the comp plan this evening. If you don't get a chance to speak, or if you feel you haven't had enough time to fully review the document, we're meeting again in 2 weeks, so you're welcome to come back at that time and provide us with whatever comments or questions you might have. We won't begin our internal discussions or deliberations on the draft plan until everyone's had a chance to give us their comments.
And they can also email comments through that email address too.
Correct. There's an email address somewhere that you can send your comments.
It's on the website under the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
It's comp plan, C-O-M-P, plan, P, another P, 2 Ps, L-A-N, at H-A-V, first letters of Haverford, T-W-P, abbreviation for township.org.
And it's also on the back of the summary, the email address.
Yes. And Kelly checks that site every 10 minutes. Okay, so let's start with anyone who's representing a group. Please come up, give us your name, address, and the group you're representing. We'll start with those people, folks. Anybody over here? I see 2 volunteers over there on the left.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for putting this meeting together. My name is John Druin, 1815 Earlington Road in Havertown. I'm also Vice President of Discover Haverford, and I'm here with Jean Angel, who's our Executive Director for Discover Haverford. I'd like to start just by complimenting you on a great plan. A lot of work went into this. It covers a lot of facets of community life. Our board and staff have reviewed the comprehensive plan, and we're very excited by the proposals outlined, and we strongly support the plan. In particular, thank you for including some of the comments, suggestions, recommendations we made in September as part of the initial meetings. And we ultimately look forward to the continued development of the plan and eventual implementation. Now, we've submitted some additional comments through email, but we'd also like to just highlight some of those comments here. One is that looking at the proposal for the township to be designated or have a Main Street program designated, and then that would be most likely administered by Discover Haverford. And Discover Haverford has actually modeled itself and our operations after typical national Main Street programs. And certainly we're kind of amenable to that if that's the direction that the township wants to go in. However, there are a number of both benefits and challenges associated with a Main Street program that would probably require further discussion. So we were hoping that perhaps you could tweak the language a little bit rather than recommending just going for the Main Street program. Instead, suggest that Discover Haverford and the township review the strengths and weaknesses of formal designation over the next couple of years and make a decision as to whether this is the best approach for our community. In either case, I think we would very much welcome a more formal relationship with the township and between the township and Discover Haverford that is either under a designated Main Street program or a Main Street-like program. And then second, we strongly support the proposal to provide incentives for new mixed-use development of the Eagle Road corridor. This is, I think, very much priority for the residents of the township as well as us. And also, I think the idea of including guidelines to improve walkability, safety, and attractiveness of the strip is critical. In addition to that, and I think this is partly addressed by the development incentives, but it would also be good to provide incentives of some sort to attract certain types of businesses to Eagle Road and the Oakmont area that would really take advantage of the improved walkability. People could walk down and visit restaurants, pubs, certain types of resale and services, and really increase the overall vitality of the neighborhood as a whole, as well as the specific business districts. Jean?
Hi, I'm Jean Angel from 2510B Road, and I'm Executive Director of Discover Haverford. We're very pleased that the committee has embraced the concept of the town center that we had suggested, and the use of the Oakland Triangle to be developed for this purpose. We believe that open space in the triangle, which can be used for public gatherings, would enhance the quality of life for our community, as well as express our unique sense of place as a village. We recommend that the long-range plan would be to purchase the properties to the southeast of the township building from willing sellers to expand this open space. We'd like to see the old township building or its facade be repurposed rather than tearing it down and rebuilding. We also need to enhance public parking in the area, either with a carefully landscaped municipal lot within the triangle or located nearby. We recommend that the township apply for a Keystone Communities Planning Grant, which is a $25,000 matching grant, to hire a consultant to manage the planning process to determine the best use of the township building to address parking issues and space for public gatherings. We also know that tourism and hospitality are important for attracting customers from a broader geographic area into our township to support our businesses, but there are no hotels or accommodations in the township to support such tourism. Without them, there are lost opportunities from large events such as golf tournaments, Haverford College's graduation, Parents' Weekend, and alumni reunions, as well as the needs of residents as they host out-of-town guests. We recommend that the plan address ways to support tourism and hospitality establishments, possibly including development incentives for small boutique hotels, bed and breakfasts, or allowing Airbnb accommodations. Thank you for your time tonight, and we appreciate the work of the Planning Committee, the consultant, and your work.
Okay, thank you for your input, and we did get a copy of your letter. Everyone has a copy of your letter.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Mm-hmm. We've been doing a lot of work over the last 12 years on a volunteer basis, modeling ourselves over a typical national Main Street program. And that involves, to some degree, having a focus, and if the township went forward with a town center, that could become a focus, but there are certain stipulations of Main Street program in order to have an organization funded. We would have to have, full-time executive director specifically focused on a lot of the projects, and then there's a lot of work that's involved in basically tracking, gathering data, a lot of things that we don't do now that we would need to take on. And currently, our organization really has a broader focus to allow us to work on projects throughout the town. If we were under a Main Street program, we may need to kind of focus more and just spend a lot of more time and energy collecting data and reporting back to the Main Street program. We would be happy to consider that, but at the same time also consider kind of following the principles of a Main Street program, but having a little bit more flexibility and efficiency. Probably a couple of years to really decide which direction that the township wanted to go in.
And just to clarify any ambiguity, what you're talking about is within the context of a Main Street program, not the comprehensive plan over the next.
Right, exactly, yes, thank you.
And development of the triangle as a town center is independent of the Main Street program also, correct?
Yeah, that could progress with or without a Main Street program, but a Main Street program or having a town center to focus on would be consistent with one of the stipulations of the Main Street program.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have questions for these folks? No? All right, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
I was just going to add that an example of a Main Street program would be Media Borough. It's often a combination of historic preservation, special events, promotion, organizing businesses together, having activities to bring people down. You can also share a Main Street manager with another community, too. That's another option.
Is there anyone else that represents a group that would like to speak? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Schmel and members of the Planning Commission. Thank you for your service. My name is Jake Swan. I live at 522 Oakley Road in Haverford. I've been a resident of the township for over 11 years. In addition to being a resident, I'm also the vice president of the Brynford Civic Association. First of all, I want to say that it's great that a comprehensive plan is finally happening. 30-plus years seems like a long amount of time. Secondly, we really appreciate the efforts of the, I guess it's the steering committee, to include feedback from the community, both these Zoom meetings, in-person meetings, surveys, et cetera. And we are sincerely hoping that the Planning Commission will continue to not only take feedback, but also implement some of the suggestions from the feedback. I think I heard that the comprehensive plan was being drafted a couple years ago, and in preparation for having a look at the draft, I checked out the old 1988 comprehensive plan as well, and had a look at some of the comprehensive plans from other surrounding municipalities. In preparation for this meeting, the Brynford Civic Association had a meeting, I guess it was 3 weeks ago, and collected some feedback from members. And we, there was quite a lot of feedback from the community on the draft comprehensive plan. I think you'll hear from other people tonight, but the main thing I wanted to focus on is how accessible the draft plan is to residents. It seems like Haverford is a primarily residential community. As Charlie said, most people are happy with their neighborhoods, and they want them to stay the same. I don't feel like that was emphasized very, very much in the draft plan. I also found it very difficult to find information related to the specific neighborhoods in the plan itself. So in order to find, I think, the 6 or 7 references specific to Brynford, I had to wade through 96 pages of the plan, which some people are willing to do, but I think few people are. I noticed in the 1988 plan, there were actually specific sections for each neighborhood that talked about the goals for the neighborhood, the issues in the neighborhood, and what the vision is for that neighborhood. That was very useful. And at least the folks in Brynford would really like to see that in the new draft. It would make it a lot easier to digest for the community. Another concern is all of the changes to the zoning ordinances, which without a easy to understand correlation between what we have now and what you're suggesting, these changes will affect many properties in the township, specifically in our area. And residents just need to understand how it will affect them and their neighborhood. And that's not very clear in the draft plan. Lastly, it feels like the plan is really driven by commercial development. And not only the zoning changes will allow for more commercial development, specifically the pretty dramatic expansion of the office residential category to cover, I think it's now there are only a couple areas that it covers, but now it will move up to a very large number of areas. I think it's 6 in the township. That will affect nearby residences. But also it feels like in the plan you are encouraging the increase in density for the residential areas. So for example, collapsing R3, 4, and 5 all into, I guess it would be R5, which is downgrading the zoning for a large number of residences. So that should be, if the goal of the plan is to increase the commercial activity, if this is a main goal and to increase the residential density, that should be just sort of clearly stated right up front so that residents are aware of that. I did not see that as a goal for, that you got in the survey that you handed out initially. Those are my comments.
Well, thank you for that. Just one item, we're not looking to expand office residential, it's commercial residential.
Neighborhood commercial residential.
Neighborhood commercial residential.
Well, it looked like office residential is being expanded from a couple areas to a large number of corridors. Is that not correct?
I don't think that's correct.
I mean, there's like 3 office categories, and I think we proposed to merge it down to 2. But I don't remember a significant change there being recommended.
It didn't seem like the parameters for the office residential category were being changed, but the areas to which it would apply were being expanded considerably.
I mean, they don't cover very large areas to start with, the office residential. It's a lot of small lots, for instance, on Route 1, I remember.
And Haverford Road, I believe.
Yeah, the northern part of Haverford Road there was not an intent to change the northern part of Haverford Road.
Well, I can review and send in a written comment.
Yeah, as far as the densities in the residential districts, there was not an intent to increase densities in the main residential districts. The intent was to direct the new growth to redevelop areas in need of that need redevelopment, which is maybe about 3% of the township. So for simplicity purposes, to make it a little easier to read the map did show R3, 4, and 5 together as the same color, but we only proposed to merge together, I think it was R4 and R5, which is they have a 500 square feet difference.
No, my understanding was they were all being collapsed.
There is a more detailed zoning memo we did that has a little more of the details, but the only specific recommendation was to merge 4 and 5 together because they are extremely similar and there's no reason for a difference. So we were not proposing to merge R3 and R4, but R4 and R5 will be merged together to try to simplify the ordinance and make it a little easier to understand.
Jake, if you could submit your comments in writing to us,
Sure.
then we can take a closer look at the individual items that you're concerned about.
Sure.
Okay?
Absolutely.
If that works for you, that'll help us too.
No problem.
All right. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Anyone else representing a group? Okay. Oh.
My name is Kathleen Case, 121 County Line Road, Bryn Mawr. And I am also with the Brentford Civic Association. I'm chair of the Polo Field Committee. You'll see a lot of Brentford folks here because we have so many issues in our area of the township that we're keenly interested in this. What I'd like to address is the separation of planning for parks and recs from the comprehensive plan. That was a decision taken some time ago, I believe. Comprehensive plans sometimes include parks and recs plans, sometimes do not. I think this township has, the last plan we had for parks and recs, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, was in the 70s or something. It was a separate plan. It was not widely distributed. We have a copy in the archives at the Historical Association. So because parks and recreation are such a keen part of the township, what I'm concerned about is how transparent the planning for that will be. This comprehensive planning process, and I was on the committee, is much more transparent than it's ever been in the past. There were not there was not a steering committee in the past for the last plan in '88. There wasn't for the '70 plan, which never passed. And there was a lot of fracas, so this is certainly an improved process. But by doing a separate process for the parks and recs, it implies that they can be planned for differently from the rest of the township. So I understand that there is a consultant being hired and that a plan is being developed, but is it going to have a process that includes input from members of the township, particularly those of us who have problem parks in our area, which the polo field certainly qualifies as a problem park, and those who really want to see this, we all believe those are vital parts of our township, but I did a lot of strategic planning in my career, and you can't leave out a big piece of it out of the whole plan without, so will it be incorporated into the comprehensive plan, either as an addendum? Will it have the same approval processes? And what is the process? And that's my question.
Did you want to direct that to Brian?
Yeah, Brian?
You know, I was on the comprehensive plan committee, like you know, and we were dealing with a number of issues. And we felt like, or at least in the Parks and Rec, felt like that we wouldn't be able to deal with the issues related to Parks and Rec in the format because there just wasn't enough time to deal with those topics specifically. So the idea is that we look at a plan that can deal more closely with our open space areas, our stream corridors, our parks. We have 34 parks and how we're going to maintain them, and we're developing new trails and how we're going to maintain them. So the process and the time allowed to do the comprehensive plan, I don't think would have fully allowed to deal with the issues that you're bringing up. Neighborhood concerns about the parking around parks, neighborhood concerns about the use of parks, how they're permitted, that kind of thing. So Delaware County had a grant program. We applied for a grant. And the idea is that this Parks and Recreation Open Space Plan, as we've developed trails over the last 10 years, as we added more park space that has to be maintained by the township, we wanted to do something that would focus on those topics. So I think that the reason that it wouldn't be developed, it wouldn't have made sense in this comp plan is there wasn't enough time and resources available to focus on those topics like I think would be necessary to meet the needs of the residents.
So is there going to be a public process? Is there an advisory group that consists of the public?
Absolutely. It will be very, very similar to
Okay.
the model that you have here. And the plan only works if you get robust citizen involvement. If you don't get involvement, you're not going to get buy-in. And what we're trying to do with this plan is to try to get residents to understand if we want to keep our facilities at a certain level, that are required, the resources required will need to be allocated. So that was the goal of this plan because we felt like we could more fully develop the parks and recreation issues that wouldn't be allowed in the scope of this plan that was developed through the comprehensive.
So they're not completely separate from the rest of the township by any means because they involve traffic and parking issues and things like that.
Right.
And zoning in some cases and regulations for those. And the timeline for this plan is this year.
Yes, we would expect to start sometime probably September because we don't want to try to start a plan in August when people are away and aren't paying attention. But the process would probably take a full year to do, and there'd be multiple public meetings. There would be a study group that we would look to possibly get somebody from this board here, somebody from representing a group like yours, Historical Society, our youth sports groups, neighborhoods, civic associations. So we would hope to get very robust citizen involvement, because if we don't, the plan's not going to be worth it.
Could I propose maybe that we include a passage or clause or section in the comprehensive plan that references a parallel Parks and Rec plan and establishes some guidelines for how you're going to go about that plan, knowing that it won't be complete before this comprehensive plan is hopefully revised and amended and actually approved, so that we can get through this without holding up the Parks and Rec plan, but can make sure that the Parks and Rec plan is actually integrated with the comprehensive plan?
Again, that would be a decision of the Board of Commissioners. They would be the ones approving any plans that we do, including this comprehensive plan.
So it does allow, the code does allow for addenda to comprehensive plans, So they could incorporate this, if the time works, as an addendum, so that it's sort of sealed a little bit more into the overall planning of the department. My concern was, as a separate process, it doesn't, and so close in timing that there ought to be a way, as you say, to integrate this, and that, I guess, would be a board decision as to whether, I'm not sure who approves the Parks and Recs plan. I assume is it this group? Board of Commissioners. Yeah, they'd have final approval. Does it come to the Planning
Yeah,
Commission?
it'd be a process very similar to this. It would come in front of the planning commission.
Okay, so there is such a juxtaposition of these things. It was concerning because we collected information and surveys about the parks, and the people who responded to those surveys aren't going to see it in the comprehensive plan.
But, and you were part of this process, you realized that we needed more data focused on parks and recreation.
Sure, I understand
And
that.
the scope of this plan wouldn't have allowed for that. In
I
fact,
mean,
we're going to spend as much on the parks and recreation plan as was spent on this plan.
It is a normal process to have a comprehensive plan and then to have more specific detailed plans following through, looking at more detail, in the same way that we're recommending that you update the zoning ordinance, updating your details of your site plans for your park and rec and your trails and your maintenance plans, I think falls under that umbrella of the comprehensive plan.
Okay, so that was my question, and as long as we're assured that this is going to dovetail into the whole comprehensive plan, because it seems like a vacuum about it right now. And I'm glad to know that we can correct that. Thank you.
It's going to be very hard to develop new parkland in this township simply because the land's not available.
Yeah.
So the comprehensive plan showing you where the parkland is and the current trail projects are. And I think the rec plan is primarily going to be looking at what improvements do you not want and do want within those parks. But I don't expect a big change in the locations of parkland.
So, and just adding as thank you, that does answer my question. Adding as a Brynford citizen, the downzoning issue in my area, my particular neighborhood has been, the zoning has changed twice, and the net gain is 4 houses.
Thank you, Kathy. Any other groups? Okay, I want to start over. Yes, sir. Oh, I want to do it in order. Starting this side, first row. Anybody first row? Wish to talk? Second row. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Diane Durant Law, and I live at 738 Rugby Road in Bryn Mawr. And I want to thank the board, the Planning Commission board, and our consultant, and everyone who has worked very hard at trying to put together this draft plan to this point. It's very helpful even to be here tonight and listen not only to the initial summary presented by Charlie, which adds more context to the draft plan as it was written and distributed, and frankly, a lot more context that I think is needed by probably many residents, hopefully not just by myself, to look at what the goals and the plans incorporated here really are. And also some of the comments that have already been made have been specific to some of the things that I've been feeling are important to stress. I do think that overall, we need to be, well, I suggest we need to be looking at what makes Haverford Township unique and how do we preserve and strengthen that. Just as an initial, opening to the idea of perhaps more goals that could be identified and incorporated in the plan, more goals than exist currently in the draft plan. I think goals as a community make it more of a living document as opposed to one which is more focused on plan regulations. And I think that there are a lot of ways to to get the robust citizen involvement that Brian mentioned, and that has already been done through the process to this point. But I question whether it might be good to have more citizen involvement, more ways of looking at how do we get to some of the demographics, some of the groups that may not have participated fully to this point in order to make it the robust plan it should be. So are there ways that we could do further outreach to seniors, to young families with children? In our community, and I'm from Brynford as well, we have a group that has met numerous times to look at safety issues and how to best incorporate ideas and plans for walking and biking and access to public transportation and to recreational things with the children. Are there ways that we could be looking at getting further info through from commuters who are using the high-speed rail line, for instance, which is one of the major ways of people from the township getting into jobs in Center City or out the other direction. I think if you think it's a good idea to look at more outreach before the process goes to the planning committee, as I happen to, maybe there are some ways of really reaching out further to groups in order to look at whether there are more goals for what this community should look like in 15 years that have been established so far. And there really might be. From my own perspective, I want to just comment on a couple of things that, and again, in reading the draft plan, and without having as much context as we have so far even tonight, a few things jumped out to me, including safety. And I think, for instance, the groups of young families with children will offer a great deal about walking and biking and that type of safety issue and bike lanes, et cetera. But one safety thing I want to focus in on is Haverford Road and the fact that so many commuters might use the high-speed rail line and there's no good access to it from our streets and neighborhoods. In our neighborhood, you take your life in your hands if you're crossing Haverford Road to get over to Ardmore Junction, for instance, or the access from Bryn Mawr. So I'd really like the plan to look at future access across the road for pedestrians and bikes to make it safe and to really utilize the public transportation that's more important as every day goes by. And I think it was mentioned, probably by Charlie, that there should be an expansion of sidewalks. That was one thing that was on my mind, that there's really a lack of sidewalks on our part of Haverford Road from, say, the Lower Marion line, say Landover Road, then going east. There are sidewalks that are sporadic, and rather than waiting for or expecting the homeowners to upgrade the sidewalk access there, I think maybe you want to look at a plan to really develop a good sidewalk system so that people can get to the high-speed rail line and can cross the road safely. I also want to just comment on an issue which is, I call it affordable housing, to lump it together. There are various ways and efforts to look at affordable housing, but there's no doubt, especially in the past years, with the cost of housing having increased so greatly, in our community especially. In fact, Zillow just named Havertown as the, what did they call it? One of the most popular communities in the Northeast, meaning one of those at which the rate of increase in housing has outpaced others, and we're named as the #1 popular location in all of the Northeast. And our housing prices have increased because of various reasons. As a realtor, I'm happy to give you statistics, but we all know how much the home down the street has increased in value, and prices that have gone just crazy in the last couple of years, especially during the pandemic and the greater move of people from the city to the suburbs. But I think in a comprehensive plan, it might be good to look at affordable housing and how do we really make housing somewhat more affordable for all of our residents in the future. And I'm thinking of seniors and them being priced out of our neighborhoods. Maybe there are a number of different ways to try to incorporate affordable housing, but I think it's a worthy goal to really anticipate and plan for. There may be a way to look at having developers pay into a sustainability fund for seniors to access tax credits or small grants for things like tankless water heaters and solar panels and other things that would make their costs less in the long run and allow them to stay longer in our neighborhoods and our communities. Maybe there are ways to anticipate public buildings or other private buildings that with the township's help could become senior housing or housing for people with disabilities. Shopping centers may become less of a draw every day, and with the township's help, maybe there are ways of looking at plans to, in the future, help turn those into housing. Let me see. I don't want to take any more time.
Diane, I want to ask you to wrap it up, okay?
Okay. And I just want to comment also on what Kathy Case was saying about the Parks and Recreation. That was going to be one of my points too, that I think it's extremely important to incorporate Parks and Rec into a plan because it's a big part of our daily life. Thank you.
Thank you.
Angel, if I can just add a couple points.
Let me just say one thing first, Charlie.
Please.
Diane, the comprehensive plan is not set up to design things, okay? It gives recommendations it's like a blueprint of what we want to do in the future, okay? So let's say you want to improve access to the Norristown high-speed line along Haverford Road. That could be a goal in the comprehensive plan, but the comprehensive plan isn't going to do the surveys and the studies necessary to build those improvements. That comes after the fact, okay? So I want you to be aware that the comprehensive plan sets the goals, but it's up to the township to follow up after the fact to implement those goals, okay? Oh, I understand. Thank you.
I was just going to add 2 points. One is the northern part of Haverford Road, similar to the commercial portion of Haverford Road to the south, it may make sense to convert one of the lanes to designated turn lanes, and that would give you the advantage of having room for protected median refuge islands in the center of Haverford Road. If you're not going to be able to have traffic signals with walk signals to help people cross the road, that's kind of the next best thing to give them, only having to cross one lane of traffic at a time. It makes it much simpler, and it's designed so that wheelchairs have a place of refuge in the center of the road. So that would involve a more detailed traffic engineering study, working with PennDOT to carry out that type of recommendation and see what works and what doesn't work for the traffic flow. Secondly, on the issue of affordable housing, it certainly is a critical issue everywhere. 71% of the housing units in the township are single-family detached. You don't have, even though you have a number of townhouse and apartment complexes, you don't have as many other communities. One of the ways we're looking is to direct that need to the redevelopment areas, to have a community benefit come out of that strong market for the apartments and use it to redevelop Eagle Road, to have a more that attract developers to come in and buy land, assemble land, and do a project there. And you do that by giving them the residential upper story option, which is what makes the economics work, because the commercial by itself is not enough. And right now they don't have that option. Once you have, for instance, a 3-story building, a new building, you're most likely to have elevators. That provides the access for the disabled persons, provides access for the seniors to have another housing choice and to be able to age in place. The last point, I should have highlighted this previously, Leonard Country Club. Nobody wants that land developed. They'd like it to stay a golf course forever. But if the pressure in the future ever arises where a portion of the land is proposed to the development of the whole thing, we want to be prepared. And the plan says that the township should have zoning in place for clustered senior housing options. That involves an opportunity to do, for instance, a cluster of senior condos in a corner of the property and keep the bulk of the land open as a golf course or some other recreation use. Providing some incentives and some flexibility is kind of relief valve so that the whole property doesn't turn over and get developed, and that you don't have a challenge to your current zoning ordinance trying to develop the whole property. If we can allow the members or the owners or whoever the investors are in the future to have an option to get some return out of the land other than just a golf course, it helps to relieve the pressure both legally and financially to want to develop the whole property. And having some additional senior housing opportunities there would allow chances for people to age in place within the township. There's a lot of people who love this community, they'd like to stay here, but they can't maintain their house and they want another opportunity, and there will be one location where you can do it.
Angelo, can I ask, is it the intent to hear public comment and have a response period after each public comment this evening?
If someone asks a question, we try to give them an answer, okay? If they have a comment about the plan, we should take notes on that and incorporate that into our deliberations.
Yep.
If they have a specific question, I think we should take the time to answer the question. Okay, so third row. Fourth row, yes, sir.
Good evening. My name's John Waters. I live at 3016 Hermosa Lane, Ward 4, and I'm here representing myself. And that will become important a little later. I was at a conference 2 years ago down, I think it was Atlanta, Georgia. It was a fire chiefs conference, and we were talking about community planning. When I got done that, a year later, I wrote myself a report on it. And in the report, it mentions community comprehensive plans. Page 42 of the comprehensive plan is typical of many comprehensive plans that I've read, in that it considers fire protection to be the fire department. And the subject is exceedingly broader than that. Fire department operations is the small part of the fire protection equation. Over the last number of years, there's been some changes at the state level. For instance, there was no constitutional right to fire protection. However, that changed some 14 years ago when the state of Pennsylvania passed legislation requiring the township to provide for fire protection services, quote, by the means and to the extent decided by the township. That means a couple of things. The comprehensive plan, if it's comprehensive, should address by what means and to what extent is the community going to plan for future fire protection. Senate Resolution 6 at the state level should be something that all of you take a close read to. In the last 40 years, fires have changed dramatically. It used to be that when a fire would start in somebody's house, and by the way, I got interested in this subject when my house burned down on Friendship Road in 1969. So I've seen it from both sides of that equation. When the fire becomes deadly, it took 20 to 30 minutes. Lots of time for the fire department to assemble, get there, squirt water. In today's environment, due to the changes in our furniture being made of more synthetic materials, the fire's becoming deadly in under 5 minutes. Well, if the whole concept of how fast the fire is growing has changed, we should be planning on how we're going to address that. We need stronger regulations for building protection. I saw that the number one thing that the community wanted was more single-family dwellings. Yet in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the state legislature has although in 2009 the International Residential Code started to require residential sprinklers, the state was kind enough to make your decision for you that you're not going to be allowed to require them. They took them out of the code.
For single-family detached houses?
Detached and semi-detached.
Okay.
Townhouses are still required, but I did note that in the survey you wanted more single-family dwellings. Cluster developments. Generally, in your cluster developments, the buildings are obviously closer together, and in some cases the streets are less accommodating to fire trucks. The other thing I would ask you to take a look at is, you can go up and look at the final report of State Resolution 6 regarding community fire protection. It is an interesting, to say the least, document. I will have to note here that if, fire protection has to do with the zoning code, the subdivision code, the building code, the fire code, the residential code, all of which very typically in a comprehensive plan get ignored. And I'm asking you to give it some thought as you take a look at the comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Is this my copy?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'm just going to raise a couple points there. It's a very valid concern. There is an appendix to the construction code about fire apparatus access. I'm not quite sure if that's in effect in
It's in the
Pennsylvania.
fire code.
Okay, it's in the fire code.
However, it
and
is
that
in-
has been adopted by Haverford, but not everybody.
I don't know that Haverford adopted the appendix. It has to be adopted separately from adopting the fire code.
Okay, there is a very good appendix available
Yes.
on fire apparatus access that you may wish to put in reference or put in your subdivision ordinance if it's not done. You are not allowed as a township to change the construction codes.
Actually, that is not true.
Okay, unless you can prove there's an
Hardship.
unusual circumstance in your community.
If you wanted to, well, in that case, what I believe Haverford Township should do, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania gave you a mandate that you will provide for fire protection to the means and extent that you decide. Then it took the authority away for you to use building and fire protection as one of the means to provide for fire protection. Yes, exactly. They gave you the responsibility and took away the authority. There's something wrong with that. Thank you.
John, are you affiliated with any of the fire departments in the township?
I'm a volunteer at the Bon Air Fire Company, and they'll probably kill me if they found out I'm here.
Thank you.
Maybe they're not listening.
Hi, thank you, Board. My name is Josh Dupuy. I live at 762 Buck Lane in Brentford. I've been there for 5 years. It's my wife and I and my 3-year-old son and my 1-year-old daughter. I know there's not a lot of parents here tonight of young children. I live right near Preston Park. There are a lot of young families moving in. I ran over here after bedtime. It's tough to get here, so hopefully you can provide some voice to the young families moving into the township. First and foremost, I do want to say how important the comprehensive plan is. There was a restaurant or a non-conforming use on our block at 701 Haverford Road who wanted to put in a restaurant. We referenced the 1988 comprehensive plan that was zoned R6 as an argument that that should not be allowed. So I do appreciate the importance of the comprehensive plan that helped us in the fight to not allow that restaurant to be put in. To echo what Jake said, I think it would be great to have more references to specific neighborhoods so we can reference it more easily, especially when things like zoning inquiries come up or people are trying to put different things into the neighborhood. Also, I know there are some mentions in the comprehensive plan about walkability and traffic, but again, not always specific to neighborhoods. That is my #1 concern in my neighborhood. I walk 1 block every single day from my house to the Haverford Friends School with my son. There is no sidewalk on the 800 block of Buck Lane, and it is deadly walking with a 3-year-old down that street, and that is 1 block from my house. The walkability it's just not good enough in the neighborhood. And I think that is my primary concern as a parent. When our commissioner election was coming up, I organized over a dozen families to meet with the candidates to discuss parks, walkability, and zoning, so we could protect the residential identity of our neighborhood and to make sure that it was safe for our kids to walk around and to play in the parks. I echo what was said earlier about the parks and our desire to see that as part of the comprehensive plan. I know we addressed that, saying it would be broken out into a separate one, but just wanted to echo that parks in the township and keeping them developed and modern and accessible is a primary concern for me. But also, you need to be able to walk to those parks. The 800 block of Buck Lane has Preston Park, and it has 2 schools, and it has no sidewalk. So it is just so difficult to ride. And right now, I know not everybody lives on a street or in a neighborhood where your kids could go out of your driveway and ride a bike down the street, but I don't see why that couldn't be my neighborhood, but there's no way it could happen right now. So while walkability is maybe loosely mentioned in the comprehensive plan, I personally would appreciate more specific neighborhood mentions, and that being a primary goal to increase green spaces and walkability in the neighborhood. Yeah, I think that was all I had, so thank you.
Thank you. One comment about sidewalks. This board always requires sidewalks on any new subdivision or land development. We always require it, okay? They don't always get built, but we make a recommendation that sidewalks be installed because it's required by the land development ordinance, okay? So we agree, I think, as a board, that sidewalks are important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Angelo, just one comment there. Page 31 does call out considering speed tables on some streets in the Brentford section. And an example was Railroad Avenue north of College and Buck Lane east of Haverford Road as places where a speed hump may make sense to reduce speed. Particularly when you have narrow roads near schools and you don't have room to put in sidewalks, or you would take out a large number of trees to put in sidewalks. That's a situation where a speed hump, which is an elongated speed bump, can make sense to reduce speeding and make it a little more walkable. It's not a perfect solution, but it's helpful.
And they help to slow down the traffic is what it comes down to.
Well, I think ideally what we would like in the neighborhood is for there to be more one-ways. If the streets are too narrow, then it should be one-ways and there should be bike lanes and bigger paths for walkability. I don't really care about making bigger streets for more cars to come through my neighborhood, and I don't really care that much about commercial development that's going to drive more traffic And personally, as a young resident of Haverford, I'm not going to spend money in the township unless I can walk there. I'm not looking to get in my car. I haven't commuted to work in over 2 years since the pandemic, and I've spent the 2 hours I spent in my car, I now spend in our parks. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. And I think that the comprehensive plan, if it's a forward-looking document, needs to consider that green spaces, environmental building, and walkability is the future of this township, and that young families are looking for a town feel where you can walk to commercial developments, where you can walk to your parks, is the most important. It is not allowing 10,000 cars to go up and down your street every day, which happens on my block right now, as people cut between Haverford Ave and Lancaster. That's not what I want. I want accessibility to those lanes, but protection while living within them. So I just want to share that.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone on this side.
Hi, thank you, everybody. Thank you, members of the comprehensive plan. Thank you to the members of the board. I am secretary of the Brynford Civic Association, and I also serve on the Shade Tree Commission of the township. And, Doreen Saar, 748 Rugby Road in Bryn Mawr. And I have a variety of comments on this. First of all, I would like to put in the request that the next Planning Commission meeting be delayed for some period of time because for the Civic Association, because under the municipal planning codes, the planning agency should promote public interest in an understanding of the comprehensive plan and planning. So one of the things that we want to do is to really take the time. Now, there's been a lot of discussion of time here and how we need to get things done. And I will take you back to the time that I was working as a technical writer at IBM. And at the time, this was in the early development of computers. And I was a technical writer, and engineers had spent a lot of time developing the hardware for computers, and another group had developed the other pieces of it. It wasn't until it came to me as the technical writer that I could point out that the group that had developed the body had not communicated with the group that had developed the software. So all of these years had been spent in doing incompatible things. So the purpose and the time spent is time that we can cure issues. So I think we should not rush to judgment. It's nice to do things quickly, but eyes on a plan, the more eyes, the more civic groups, is really the kind of thing that guarantees a product that can be much more easily made part of the thing. And it engages the community. And what we want in Haverford Township is an engaged community. We want people to feel, I have had my voice heard. I have spoken to this, and I know my representatives, and I know my people on the commissions, really are responsive to me. But unless we engage them and give them the opportunities to do that and explain what we're doing, then those opportunities are lost. Okay, so I wanted to bring, and I'm echoing Diane Drentlaw a bit, to say that the comprehensive plan is really important for guiding the spirit of what we do in the township. And I wanted to read you what Radnor Township said in their comprehensive plan. They said, if every municipality is unique, Radnor is especially unique because of its wonderful blend of old and new residential communities and its relatively mature and built-out land use patterns, and it goes on, and it says there are two foci, the Wayne Business District, which is what you're saying with Oakmont, and the equal importance of the many different residential neighborhoods which have come to define Radnor Township. So the challenge for the Radnor Plan is more subtle, because the challenge becomes keeping Radnor as it is, preserving the outstanding historical and aesthetic qualities, keeping the residential neighborhoods affordable, maintaining the town diversity. And I think that kind of spirit is the kind of spirit that we need to add to the comprehensive plan, simply because what it does is it tells us that guideline. What is that shining light that we want to keep in our comprehensive plan? So I think that's one of the things that we see in the neighborhood development. And we saw this in the Shade Tree Commission recently with the on Manor Road. So the notion of having a neighborhood that in fact expresses an aesthetic and must be maintained in this kind of comp plan. And one question I had was, of course, there is a discussion of simplifying zoning. My question is, why? What is the data for simplification? Why should we undertake this project? Simplicity in itself is not necessarily a guiding reason. So what is the data that says this will improve? What are the issues that we're trying to overcome? Why? Why undertake a project if these are limited goals that we have, and if these are goals really only related to the development of the Eagle Road corridor, then surely that can be done more simply than an overhaul of the entire zoning process. I don't want to take up too much time, but the other issue is the involvement of civic groups. I noticed that in the new comp on page 25, it says emphasize tree plantings and tree conservation. But in fact, one of the people who are deeply involved in this is the Shade Tree Commission, who was never even consulted on this. And this is an issue in the township for the Shade Tree Commission. It's not represented in any way, and we have a lot of information about this, and it's something that we've been working on for years and really need to be involved, certainly in the implementation of Parks and Rec, because these are issues we come from: heritage trees, taking down of trees in neighborhoods. What do we do to preserve the canopy? And I think all of us are interested in preserving tree canopy because that is what makes a beautiful residential neighborhood. And tree canopy is being lost every year. Some of the other questions I had about the comprehensive plan or when we go to the implementation section of the plan, which of course is the appendix and we don't pay too much attention to, on page 47 and on, most of the responsibility for the implementation is turned over to small groups. We don't have civic groups involved in this. We don't have people like the Shade Tree Commission, and really this I'm sure that, and the Planning Commission, according to this, is pretty much doing everything. But I would recommend to you that we, in fact, engage other groups, other expertise. We reach out to a township of people with lots of talents, lots of skills, and make this a job where the implementation is not done behind closed doors. And right now, the implementation really is put into that process.
No, it's not. I disagree with that 100%. Okay? Any ordinance revision has to be advertised. It gets reviewed by the Delaware County Planning Department. It gets reviewed by this board, and it gets reviewed at a public meeting with the Board of Commissioners. So it's very transparent when changes are made to zoning ordinances. And you should know that because the Shade Tree Commission just developed a new shade tree ordinance. Did they not?
Yes.
Okay. And was that transparent? Was that process transparent?
It was transparent. We would
Well,
like
then
more.
Everything else will be transparent, just like that.
Well, I'd like to see more involvement by civic groups in the process.
Civic groups were involved with that ordinance change.
None, unfortunately. But I'd like to see more of that, and that doesn't mean, if the process is wrong, It doesn't mean the process going forward should be
I don't think the
correct.
process is wrong at all.
Okay, and then, because it says on page 46, continue to work cooperatively with civic organizations, neighborhood associations. I'd like to see more of that. The final question I have is in the Haverford Road corridor, there's not clarity about what the development of the Haverford Road corridor is. There is some confusion and not necessarily maintaining some of the residential areas along there. And that is an issue for our neighborhood, which abuts this. So Brynford has been concerned about that. What happens in that meeting of those two areas? Further, the notion of one of the things that happens as I read through this and you looked at the Haverford Road, there are some contradictory sections from what happens with Haverford Road as a street and Haverford Road as the development. So I think one of the things that we need to do is to bring those parts of the process together so that when we look at this, we see both together so that we can look at environmental impacts, look at residential impacts, and in fact, make sure that we're doing the right thing in these situations. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one comment about the zoning streamlining process. What we recommended, and is a memo that we provided to the township on the zoning ordinances, streamlining the provisions for things the township wants to encourage. So if you want to encourage redevelopment of a certain area, make it a little easier to do. If you want to streamline the process for putting in a rear deck on a house or adding a backyard pool, make those things a little easier to do. Avoid over-regulating the routine changes. However, at the same time, we're recommending that you strengthen and increase regulations on the things that may be detrimental to the community, that may cause nuisances, that may cause hazards. Your zoning ordinance has gotten very old and it's gotten out of date. And over the years, there's been some things added that maybe don't make sense anymore. So every so often, you should go through and just do a general cleanup of the ordinance, just to get rid of things that aren't needed anymore. So we're not proposing overall to make the ordinance less restrictive. We're proposing make certain things easier to do, make other things harder to do.
Thank you. Anybody else over here? Yes, ma'am.
Hello to everybody. My name is Lynn Elliott, 704 Polo Road, and I am going to see if I can read this. My apologies. I am not the eloquent speaker off the cuff that so many of my neighbors are, so I actually wrote mine down. But I really want to echo the importance of taking our time with all of this, because these specific zoning things that are coming up, I think it's really important that things get revised and then looked at again, and then revised and looked at again before it would go to the Board of Commissioners for them to actually approve this. If this plan, oh, somebody coughing, thank you, that, you know, the old plan lasting 30 years, if you think this is going to be 10 to 15 years, that's still a really long time, and it could end up being in this township 30 years again. So it really is important to get it right, not to get it done quickly. But I have a very specific zoning concern, which is the proposed zoning of the current O1 office district in the Brynford area bounded by Polo Road, Railroad Avenue, County Line Road, and the P&W tracks. The new zoning combines the current O1 and O2 codes to create an office or residential zone. The other areas of the township designated for this new zoning are really not equivalent to the office district in the Brynford neighborhood. Possibly they were all lumped together in a bid to simplify the zoning structure. But in this case, that simplification ignores very big differences among all of these proposed office residential areas. Most of those other areas are properties along Darby Road near Westchester Pike, Eagle Road near Westchester Pike, and the few houses along Haverford Road near the Haverford P&W station that are single-family houses on R4 or the equivalent small residential lots that have been converted over the years to house small businesses like plumbing establishments, an electric, home-based business, something like that. It may be appropriate to call those office or residential zoning lots. However, the O1 area behind my house is a completely different type of land use. These are multi-acre lots with huge commercial buildings on them, 20,000 square feet, 30,000, 40,000 square feet, and more. They are not home to Joe the plumber. The only residential use any 40,000 square foot commercial building will ever be put to here is yet another nursing home, personal care home, or medical rehab facility. This small Brynford neighborhood already has 3 of those and does not need any more. The possibility of any residential use whatsoever should be removed from this district to prevent the conversion of any of these buildings to its use as another nursing home or the equivalent. Those types of residential uses are 24-hour-a-day intensive uses with employees coming and going on all shifts, cars, ambulances, fire trucks, doing the same around the clock. Lights on all night long. Employees calling out to each other before and after shifts in the parking lots right next to our houses. These facilities are not compatible with existing residential neighborhoods. And I have a specific thing. I would also ask that the nursing home that is in current existence at the corner of Railroad Avenue and Polo Road, the Sabre Bryn Mawr Extended Care Center, be removed from the office residential category and relabeled institutional. Otherwise, it sets the precedent for a nursing home to be a permitted use in the office residential zone and could lead to others coming in based on that precedent. This proposed zoning code just does not apply to this area. No one is going to tear down a huge commercial building in order to put in single-family houses on small lots, which is what your proposed office/residential designation authorizes. It's important not to try to shoehorn something that doesn't fit into an inappropriate category. In fact, I would like you to make this district its own designated zone because it is so different from those other proposed office residential areas. I'd like to suggest that it be called an RPO, Restricted Professional Office Zone. The only uses that would be allowed in this zone are professional offices that adhere to standard business hours. This district is directly adjacent to residential properties and should not be allowed to have hours and uses that are detrimental to the quality of life of the residential neighborhood. This means no commercial uses whatsoever. No banks, no medical clinics, no urgent care facilities, no nursing homes, no fitness centers, which is what I have in the building only 15 feet from my backyard. No extended hours, no outdoor uses, events, or activities. And I state that specifically because the fitness center behind me decided a few years ago to bring its aerobics classes into their front parking lot, complete with loudspeakers and thumping music, and couldn't understand why I might object to that. These uses and extended hours need to be specifically prohibited in this district. It may be too late for me, but it would at least prevent them from coming to another building. In your proposed comprehensive plan, you list banks as a permitted use in the office/residential district. And while banks many years ago may have been limited hour uses, Nowadays, they are all 24-hour businesses because they all have ATMs, whether they're drive-through ATMs or just attached to the building. A public ATM should not be allowed near residential areas because they draw visitors all night long. For this reason, I request that they not be a permitted use in this district and that you remove them from your listed inclusion in that office district. These large commercial properties in the Brynford neighborhood, they're home to mega buildings owned by big commercial landlords and leased by well-funded commercial tenants. They can afford the best lawyers to bring to any zoning battle, and commercial interests are always trying to push the envelope in this neighborhood. For Brynford residents to have a chance at preserving our quality of life, we need this comprehensive plan and the subsequent zoning code revisions, where's Kelly, to make this area less commercial and give us the regulatory tools via the plan and the zoning code to fight zoning battles against formidable commercial interests. And yes, it is a continuing fight in this neighborhood, as everyone on this board is aware. And I just want to remind you of the very first page of the comprehensive plan and things that you have actually already stated tonight. Mr. Held, is it? In any event, the number one item listed as a major goal of the plan is provide for orderly patterns of development that provide compatibility between land uses, particularly to protect the livability of residential areas. Protect the livability of residential areas. Number one goal. I ask that you protect the residents of Brynford, this absolute gem of a neighborhood, by revising your proposed zoning of our current O1 district to not be this office residential district, but rather restricted professional office, with all the prohibitions and all the restrictions I have already mentioned. That will help protect the livability of our residential area. So thank you very much.
One question for you, Lynn. Okay. You're referring to the area along Haverford Road up to Railroad Avenue? That neighborhood in that area in there?
Right, from Polo Road up to.
Here it is, right here.
Everything on purple,
This right here.
in purple,
Oh, that's
there. Purple, we're dark purple, along with these
Oh,
other
okay,
things
it's,
that are
okay,
there.
gotcha.
Dark purple. And including the nursing home, which has been institutional, I believe, and was included as this office residential, which just sets the precedent, as I said, for another nursing home to go in one of those buildings.
Okay, there's a lot of legal ramifications to what you're talking about. I mean, just so you know. I mean, you can rezone a property, but that doesn't mean the use goes away automatically.
Oh, I'm not saying, hey, we know about grandfathering.
Okay.
In this neighborhood, we have 1 million non-conforming uses that are all grandfathered because, they existed before a zoning code change. However, if this comprehensive plan gets put into place with the zoning the way it is, as a nursing home being allowed in this purple office residential zone, that just leads to someone else who takes one of the other buildings to say, hey, well, that nursing home is just fine in this office residential zone. That's different. If it's institutional, which is what it has been, then institutional is a different classification than the rest of this office zone, or as I would like, restricted professional office zone. So, thank you.
Angela, just one clarification. The O1 office district allows offices and banks, that's it. And medical clinics by special exception. The O2 office residential allows offices, banks, and single-family detached houses. There's no provision in either of those current districts for nursing homes, personal care centers,
What happens to the
fitness
nursing
centers.
home that's already there?
Excuse me?
Is there a nursing home though in all one of those places already?
I don't know the history of the zoning districts. All I'm saying is that when we're referencing the office residential category, right now it only allows offices and single-family detached houses.
And it's not that I'm unaware that those things are not specifically, listed. However, I'll tell you, in the O1 zone, to which I am directly adjacent, fitness centers aren't allowed either. Well, go figure. There's a fitness center. I mean, things do happen, and that's why I'm saying they should be listed as specifically prohibited in a restricted professional office zone. And if you have a category that is office or residential, even if you have in the code, well, hey, it's supposed to be just small single-family houses on medium-density lots, well, if I'm a developer and I see office or residential, well, hey, you can stretch that residential to be something other than that little R4 single-family lot. Why can't I have a medical rehab facility? Why can't I have a 24-hour care facility here? Because there's a residential use allowed. Needs to be prohibited altogether. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. John Devine from 727 Panmure Road. And I don't often come to public meetings, but and it may be a little corny to start out this way, but it makes me super proud to be an American. I was sitting in the back there and thinking like, wow, it's amazing. So thank you for allowing me public input. I wanted to just endorse the thoughts of Jake and Catherine and Kathy and my neighbors from Rugby and Polo Road. I agree with what I've heard. I wanted to specifically ask a question, maybe I'll ask that last, but about simplicity versus complexity. As a physician, I can remember back in medical school, breast cancer, prostate cancer was much simpler. Now what's happened is we have multiple subcategories of all of those, of both of those cancers, and we treat them very differently. And we get better outcomes. And I would actually argue to go much more complex on your zoning laws and your maps, because to the other points that have been made this evening, the complexity is what gets you, a more focused, better outcome for those specific areas. I don't really see any benefit at all to simplify. I specifically wanted to just endorse what Jake had said about making the plan clearer for each neighborhood. What are the zoning outcomes for each area so that people can really understand what is planned for their neighborhood. Also, Mr. Garrett, your idea about including the, some addendum in this plan to reference the upcoming plan for Parks and Rec, I thought that was very useful. And so 2 questions, and one final thought. There's nothing about taxes in there. I'm not sure it's appropriate to have it in there. I'll just ask. But as a goal for the community, that if we're going to encourage anything, that as a sort of general principle, that whatever development we're encouraging, that we'll make sure that that's, as best we can, will have a beneficial impact on taxes for our citizens rather than an increase. I hear about Lower Merion. I don't know for sure about Lower Merion, but all the development that they've had that has led to increased taxes for the school system because they've built so many apartment buildings, now they have a lot more kids, so they have to build more schools, so taxes go up. As a general principle, could we have in the plan something that says, you know, one of our goals is to make sure that the planning would lead to lower taxes, not higher taxes? And then the two questions. One was timing. I heard about not having enough time, and I wasn't sure what the parameters were for the time. And then the second was my particular neighborhood looks like it has been changed from a half-acre lot to 0.25 acre.
That was not intentional. What street are you on?
That's, is it okay to walk to the? Yeah. This area right here. That was and
It was not an intentional change there. I'll take a look at the categories.
Okay. And yeah, those were my two questions. So thank you all.
Okay. All right, as far as timing, at the beginning, I said we're not going to make any decisions until we've heard from everybody, okay? We have another meeting in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Hopefully, the Brentford Group or whoever
Yeah.
will find enough time within those 2 weeks to do more of a review of the plan. If they're not satisfied with the amount of time and we have to carry it over for another 2 weeks, we'll do that. But we don't want to make any final decisions, okay, or any recommendations until we've heard from everybody, okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then just a question on our neighbor. And we can talk offline too about that. Thank you all.
Thank you, Doctor.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Thank you for your time. I'm Charles Hurst, 113 Fawn Lane. Been there for 18 years. Absolutely love Haverford Township. Proud to be here. Certainly a well-credentialed commission. Thank you for your service. Really, three things initially. Actually, I added a fourth, just to echo the walkability. The idea of trying to use this plan to set goals specifically to achieve greater walkability. I think is an excellent goal that should be integrated into the plan. The idea of doing it with one-way streets really resonated with me, so just to echo the previous comments. My three comments that I came specifically to talk about, and I'll keep it really quick, is Brookhaven Road, trees, and utilities, specifically wastewater. So I'll go in that order. Brookhaven Road, so there's been a lot of talk about Oakmont, and I think it's a great idea, the things that have been talked about. The plan right now on page 18 makes basically one sentence about the Brookhaven Road area with restaurants. Because of its specific configuration as a tangent off of Darby Road and because of the width of the cartway, I think it's a wonderful opportunity to specifically encourage a media or Westchester style restaurant neighborhood feel to it. And I think the strategic plan is a wonderful opportunity to establish some goals to say we want to specifically target that area. I don't live anywhere near that area, but I walk around that area. I go to some of the restaurants, and to be able to extend that restaurant experience into the wide cartway, narrow that cartway, so the traffic is calmed in that area. I think we have a wonderful opportunity to use this plan to set those goals. That's Brookhaven
Was that
Road.
Brookline?
I'm sorry, Brookline. I'm saying Brookhaven. Thank you for clarifying. I appreciate it. Trees. Page 25 goes on to a lengthy description about Tree City, USA. I love trees. I live in the Cooperstown neighborhood. We have lots of trees. Every day, some trees come down. Just coming over here, some of the big canopy trees, I could tell you the exact address of trees that came down just today that just breaks my heart. I think this is an opportunity in this plan to put a little more teeth into that page-and-a-half narrative that is beautiful, but it doesn't have teeth. It needs some teeth in this plan to set some goals. Like you said, the objective of a comprehensive plan is to set some goals. That narrative is wonderful, but it needs a little bit of teeth so the tree commission and the council can use that, the commissioners, the township, the commissioners can use that to roll out some guidance with respect to taking down mature trees that are not ill, which are what's coming down. I understand people fear their trees because of some of the storms that we're having. I totally understand, but there's a response to that that needs to be integrated into this plan. Third, and probably off topic, but maybe slightly related from a land use and probably more directed at the engineer. My day job, I'm not here as in respect to my day job, but my day job, I'm the director of engineering for Delcora. So most of you probably are aware that half the township goes to RHM, and that comes to Delcora. The other half of the township goes to Upper Darby. That goes into Philadelphia. Upper Darby's contract with Philadelphia is going to renew in 2023. When that contract renews, more than likely, the same thing that happened to Delcora with respect to the costs from Philadelphia are going to happen to Upper Darby. They're not going to bear those costs alone. They're going to go to Haverford Township. Using this as an opportunity to officially go on record to say that from an engineering perspective, we really need to focus on that contract and understanding how we're going to respond to the wet weather costs that go with that contract renewal. I think it might actually go to land planning because at the end of the day, we may need to identify a place for a tank. And I know that it's going to be difficult to get paid up to approve it. But at the end of the day, they're down in that lower corner of the township. In order to deal with the Philadelphia costs, we may need to, from a land planning point of view, identify the tank. Even if it doesn't result in a change of the comprehensive plan, it is an opportunity to really begin to focus in on the pending costs that are going to hit us after the 2023 contract renewal. So those are my three
When is that
comments.
contract up?
2023.
2023?
Yep. Thank you.
I'm just going to add that also ties into the recreation plan, because you may have a scenario if you do need a new storage tank to deal with some of the combined flows and reduce some of the overflow waste. The most logical place to do it is to put it under a park. So that would be something to look at.
That's correct. That's how it connects.
Hey, Chuck Faulkner, is that on the engineering radar at any point?
It is, Angelo. I mean, we first of all, we've been involved in the whole Delcora thing, just following and tracking that and everything. And Upper Darby is, like Charles said, is sort of on the other side, but, you know, things are changing there too. So it's something we're aware of, the township's aware of. So we understand what's going on.
Thanks, Chuck.
Good evening. I'm Diana Rosenberg. I live at 22 West Clearfield Road. I also want to thank you all for your service and to Haverford Township. It's greatly appreciated, and we're fortunate to have a planning board of this caliber serving us, so thank you. I wasn't intending to speak, but I will quickly echo the comments of my neighbors about the importance of walkability in Haverford. I also have been blessed to be able to work from home for more than 2 years now, and there's no indication I will be going back to my job in Princeton, New Jersey anytime soon. I walk to the dry cleaner, I walk to the bank, I walk to 2 Wawas. I can walk here. I want to continue to walk. And when you talk about planning for retail in the future, I ask that you and Charlie, that you think about how retail has changed during the pandemic and what types of retail establishments you may want to attract in Haverford Township. Finally, I just want to say I'm a bit flummoxed by some of the comments about getting as many voices as possible to have input on this comprehensive plan. I am a resident, and I came here because I happened to get emails from Discover Haverford. I read about the comprehensive plan on their email. I even read the summary of the plan, thanks to their email. And I came here to find out what's being planned for the future. And I have every confidence that this board will get input from all types of constituencies and create a comprehensive plan that will serve our township well for 15 years and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Diana. Anybody else? Mr. Reardon.
This is my first time being on this side. I thank you for the opportunity. I'd like to add a couple of things. There is a precedent for what you're talking about at Lanark. And that precedent happened to have been when David Crockett decided to develop and to fill in the quarry. He got opposition from the neighbors who were afraid that in trying to fill in the quarry, they would break up everything. And so the EPA came in, and everybody came in to take a look and see what he was doing. It turns out that when they reviewed what he was accepting to go in the quarry and everything, they started using his plan for filling in old quarries as the national absolute standard. And as a result of that, he went back and said, okay, this thing is zoned in very substandard. And he said, I'd like to decide once it's filled in, and it took 25 years, I'd like to be able to have that worked out. The judge ruled he could do that. And so they planned the use of the quarry 25 years in advance. And that's something I got to know David fairly well at one point, and I know his son. That's what makes a difference. So if there is an interest on the part of the owners to work with the township to develop that future use of that particular place, we have a precedent, and it's just down the street. So that's one. The other problem, and my family moved into our home on Millbrook Lane in 1950, and I still own that house. And my family and I are now moving back into that house. Right now I'm over in Coopertown Road. But I watched all of the things happen on Haverford Road. I watched a little 2-lane road become this other thing. And the state came in and they took every square inch of their space that they were allotted. So they can't even go beyond the curb because that's private property now. So the biggest hassle with getting all of the sidewalks and all the other things that you're talking about doing is they ate up the right-of-way. And a friend of mine taught me about right-of-ways and how rods and chains and other things created the widths that we have for cartways. And Buck Lane was put in the late 17th century, early 18th century, and it's narrow. So is Millbrook Lane, which was built in the 1850s and 60s. But the newer roads are better. Unfortunately, I walked that same route to Haverford Friends School, and we learned ways to cut through everybody's backyards, and everybody had a rule, and that's the way we did it, because otherwise you could get mowed over by cars. I love the ideas of some of that stuff. I think a lot of people have come up with a bunch of really good ideas tonight, and I am absolutely blessed to have been able to spend 17 years with you guys, and I thank you for what you're doing, and I agree that we just need to look at some of these things. While I was on this board, the state came to us with a comprehensive plan twice about what they were going to do with Haverford Road Corridor. And then it fizzled out, as it always does when Harrisburg gets started on something. That's what they do. So somebody has to hold their feet to the fire. And if the township and the county can find some way to get the state to look at the state highways, of which we have a certain number of them, and get them to coordinate with the township, then the township will have a better, but we can't force the state to do much of anything. So this Haverford Road corridor needs to be addressed. Your ideas are wonderful, sir. I just would love to see some way that we know that the state's going to actually listen to us. So, because what did Mark Twain said? They're liars, damn liars, and statistics in that order, and we sure get them from Harrisburg. So, thank you all, and I just can't tell you how I'm looking forward to whatever you decide.
Thank you. I was just going to add, Angela, the PennDOT has money programmed for the southern portion of Haverford Road to make these changes, which is very positive.
And
in the next couple years.
And the southern portion, what is the limits of that work?
The commercial portion.
Ardmore Avenue down.
Yeah, Ardmore Avenue down.
Okay. Down to Eagle Road?
To make the changes with the turn lanes.
Okay.
And shoulders, they're proposing to use any excess right-of-way, I believe, for shoulders.
And they have put in smart, you know, the way when they did the quarry, they put in all this new smart lights so that traffic knows what's going on, and it got rid of a lot of the problems on Route 1, Township Line Road. They've begun doing that in some of the areas of when they put in the new bridges up at Ardmore Avenue, College, and Buck. But unfortunately, the one at Ardmore Avenue was the bridge is 12 to 15 feet further away from the intersection, so they wouldn't put a new one in at Ardmore Avenue, so that's all flummoxed up. And Andy Lewis was working on that when he passed away. I don't know if they've agreed to go ahead and the state put in one of those things. Those things cost millions.
Okay. Anybody else? One more time. No? Does anyone on the planning commission wish to say anything, initial comments, any thoughts, anything like that?
I do have some comments. And growing up in Philadelphia, it is a city of neighborhoods. And the comment that you made about there are different areas of Haverford that have their own identity that should be addressed. I appreciated that because I agree with you. And my other concern is the commercial corridor on Eagle Road. I don't know how to fix it, and I think there's going to be a lot of work that would be required to make that work. I don't know if I agree with beefing up the commercial area, but my whole concern is let's not go back to the future. If you remember what that movie was all about, in that the town changed drastically. And I like Havertown the way it is. I like the township the way it is, and I'd like it to stay the way it is as much as possible. Thank you.
I just want to thank all of the residents for coming out and speaking today. I thought everyone's comments were very well thought and raised a lot of good points, and it's always helpful for us to hear from everybody. I also would just like to express my appreciation as a resident of the Brynford neighborhood myself. It's great to hear from all of my neighbors. I'm on Penn Street, so I know exactly all of these areas that you're discussing. So I agree with a lot of your comments. I do just want to make a point, as somebody who has written multiple comprehensive plans in my professional career and seeing how this plays out, I just want to make everyone aware that even if the recommendations that you're making today don't wind their way up in the comprehensive plan that gets adopted, this is not the end of the road. So this is really the blueprint for the future. All of these decisions, any zoning changes to the map, any zoning changes to the text, any plans for grants for implementation of, sidewalk and mobility improvements, anything that we're looking at in terms of implementation, everything is just being mapped as a blueprint in the comprehensive plan. So the real work really hasn't even started yet. So we will have plenty of opportunities for you to come and have your voice heard. So even if what you have suggested is not in the final draft of the comprehensive plan, there's plenty of opportunities to come and have your voice heard and share that as we negotiate updating zoning code and updating zoning maps is no simple feat. It requires extensive public input. There's public hearings, there's notice, there's advertisement, it gets reviewed by the County Planning Commission, this board, and then the commissioners. So there's plenty of opportunities. So I just want to, again, express my gratitude for all of your great comments. And I hope that you stay engaged through the adoption of the comprehensive plan and then beyond as we work on implementation, because truly we need your continued input and participation to really make the implementation of this a true success. So thank you all very much.
I have a few questions. Charlie, I just have some questions. I'm trying to better understand the plan. You mentioned a comparison of current and proposed zoning, and I've been looking for that. I'm trying to figure out.
There is a separate memo we can show you that we discussed with the committee on zoning that went into a little more detail than the plan did. We felt it was a little too detailed to go into the plan, but we can share that with you.
Is there a place where we can see clearly the present zoning and either a layover or a second plan that says, so this block or this R3 section will become R5 or whatever?
There really are very few changes. Like I said, for instance, when we showed the Office 1 and the Office 2 merging together, the only net difference under the current ordinance is that you add single-family homes between those two districts. So I don't consider that to be a policy change. 97% of the land area of the township would stay the same. You know, a zoning district might go from 5,500 square feet to 6,000 square feet or vice versa. Other than that,
But those are things that neighbors care about.
yeah.
Those little details can change the quality of life.
And those details are yet to be worked out in the zoning phase. You typically,
Understood.
that level of detail was not typically
Understood.
addressed in the comprehensive plan.
But if there's a major change from a zoning that's current to zoning that's proposed, it's hard to find out. It's hard to see that in the plan.
I will
Excuse
share
me.
that memo with you, and I will elaborate upon that memo to explain the changes a little better.
Second, could you explain the maps? There's one that says generalized existing land use 2018. Is that, and then there's a second that says generalized unofficial zoning 2021. And then there's a third that says draft October 21 comprehensive plan.
Correct. The existing land use was based upon assessment data. It was started
I'm
at the
sorry,
beginning of the process.
that's the first one.
So what's existing land use is existing uses of land.
Under current zoning.
Actually, regardless of zoning, this is how the land's used.
Okay.
The generalized unofficial zoning takes the zoning map and merges together some categories just to make it easier to read, because the zoning map right now has so many categories that if we showed every one, your eyes would glaze over.
Is that
and you wouldn't be able to
is that
perceive it.
existing or proposed?
That's existing.
Okay.
So what we put together similar districts to make it easier to read the map.
Okay.
And then the comprehensive plan map is the proposal.
And then, that's very helpful, thank you. And then, also you talk about Brentford in the low-density residential 1, but when I look for that in the comprehensive plan, I can't find the low-density residential 1. So if you-
Okay, I'll have to make sure that the names are the same between the map and the text.
And I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but Brentford, as you've heard and as you know, it's varied in its zoning. It has lots of little sub-blocks. So I'm not sure if it can be grouped into one zone, such as low-density residential 1, because it has R3, 4, 5 throughout.
Yes, you certainly could come up with some subcategories at the zoning stage. So if you wanted to pay certain attention to certain sub-areas, you could come up with overlay districts as need be. There are some communities that vary lot widths, for instance, by certain portions of districts. So if there's a reason to differentiate certain portions of a district, it can be done at the zoning phase.
You mentioned 1 or 2 public meetings for zoning changes. I assume you meant for the adoption of the comprehensive plan, not zoning changes.
Well, there is at least one more required public meeting on the plan. And then I wanted to get across that before the township would adopt any zoning changes following that, there would be required to be 1 or 2 minimum additional public meetings later when the zoning is being presented.
And as Maggie Dobbs has said, that's a much longer process and more detailed process.
It is. Sometimes you can do a high priority amendment for things that you're fearful about. So you pick 3 or 4 things that you really are afraid of, that someone's going to take advantage of a loophole or that something's going to happen that you really are fearful of, and you do those things quicker, and that gives you a little more time to deal with the rest of the ordinance.
Last, will you be able to attend the next meeting?
Your next planning commission meeting is in 2 weeks. What's the date of that?
3rd.
I'm sorry, what's the date?
23rd.
I don't have my calendar in front of me. I can check tomorrow and let Kelly know if I'm available.
Okay, thank you. It was very helpful.
Actually, can I piggyback real fast off the clarification? So the draft October 2021 comprehensive plan map this is intended for the future zoning map.
Yes, we don't call it that, but it is really a future zoning map. With the idea that the zoning ordinance may vary from this, it's not binding upon the township.
Sure.
And there may be some subcategories or divisions. Again, we've merged some districts together just to make it easier graphically to show.
But I just want to clarify that this is intended as a guideline for what zoning could look like, not a future land use map.
Well, it is the land uses, types of categories of land uses, and the categories of land uses are intended to translate into zoning districts in most cases.
So I think that the memo that you mentioned with the detailed would be very helpful in clarifying some of this information, because, I mean, I live and breathe this stuff, so I'm actually very interested in reading it and potentially including it as an appendix to the plan itself.
We certainly can do that.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to thank everyone for their input. I'm old enough to be humble enough to know that I don't know everything. And in fact, I learned quite a bit tonight, both historically about what's happened in this township and about certain specific areas. And I see my role as serving the interests of the entire residential population. And this is one of the best ways that I can know what everyone's thoughts and views are. So I thank you very much.
I appreciate what you had to say about that, Mr. Montresor, because I was thinking the exact same thing when I read the comprehensive plan. There's a lot of things that I react to personally, but I think that I also am trying to review this with the perspective of many issues from the township. And actually, to that end, I've been focused on the survey results and trying to best understand what's included in the survey results. And I actually have a lot of trouble with the word maps. Is it possible to
I can give you 300 pages of survey results.
Is this because those are, if I read it, it's not logical. Like, I don't know why some words are big, like need is big.
It's the way it's generated by the computer system. It's whatever word was most commonly used is bigger. I can send the commission the full survey results. We had given it to the committee previously. It's a couple hundred pages.
Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing it because I think, Q1 says, please check off the importance of these issues. So I'd like to see which ones got checked off the most and read those sentences and maybe read the top 3.
And I'll tell you, the most interesting, one of the most valuable parts of the survey results was the details that people gave on their transportation concerns, on walkability and pedestrian access and traffic issues. There was a lot of details in there that people provided.
Yeah,
But I'll give the
where
commission
people wrote in comments, I'm definitely not looking for the write-in comments. But if it was a checkbox, then I'd like to see who did that. And I'm also interested in seeing how many people responded and how many responses you had at those.
Yeah, I think it was about
items.
3,600 responses. There was a lot of very good comments that came out of the survey.
What's the population of this township? Okay,
If you figure,
so less than 10%.
well, you figure one person per household typically responds, and the young people don't the kids don't respond. So, the percentage of the households that responded was significant. What you typically find in a survey is longer-term residents and owner-occupants are more likely to respond to a survey. But the advantage of the online survey was people could respond in 5 minutes without attending a meeting.
Do you maybe have any anecdotal information that would indicate what a normal response rate would be in a township like Haverford?
Your response rate was higher than most, but I don't have a lot of comparative data.
Okay. The only other question I had.
Sorry, to answer your question real fast, when I was working for Montgomery County Planning Commission, we did community surveys all the time, and the industry standard that we discussed at the time is 10% is outstanding community response.
Okay.
Of households, is
Of
that?
10%, yeah, so 10% of households, because similarly, most people under the age of 18 are not going to be responding to this, and then it is typically one person per household. So do we know what the total number of households is? So if we figure 17,000, if we got 3,000 responses out of 17,000 households, and with an industry, well, with a
Good response rate?
yeah, so with a community standard of 10% response rate, it was actually a very, now we could aggregate it for age groups to see, what percentage of the responses were from different demographic groups to see what the spread of that household response rate was.
It can get very complicated.
You can really take a deep dive into the statistics, but it's a,
To see if we could, establish a baseline of what if this is a good or not good response. Okay.
Yeah, and we have to look at it that there's equal opportunity to participate. You won't get, a perfectly scientific response, but everybody in the township, it was well publicized, everybody had an opportunity to respond.
And each of the maps in here are available in high res online, so that I can zoom in and
Yes,
read
yes,
it.
you can zoom in on them. Some of them were reduced a little bit for web viewing. So if you want a more detailed map, we could email you a more detailed map if there's something in particular.
Yeah, I know the version I downloaded and this hard copy version, it's very, I can't identify any road names. I have to reference Google Maps, and I'm all over the place, and then I don't know what I'm looking at anymore, to be honest.
Are churches still considered institutional?
Some of them are in institutional district, but they're typically allowed in a residential district, so
I
it
know
doesn't
that,
matter
but
that
I
much.
have a church next door to me that's institutional, but in this map, it doesn't show it. But it is institutional on the township map that I have that's this big by this big. And it was changed out a few years ago when we were getting rid of a bunch of the institutional stuff, like houses that Haverford College owned in the community for residential use. They were taken back to residential and taken out of the institutional size. But the Memorial Church to God in Montgomery and Delaware counties, that was institutional, and it was changed to institutional. And because they had flip-flopped them and they made us institutional, and we might have been needed to be institutional, but we weren't. So there's a joke somewhere. So,
Well, Angelo, I had a pile of other red lines that I was looking at in here, but I want to compare those to the comments I heard tonight and make sure that I'm not being too aggressive with any of my feedback, so I'll send them later.
Red lines, the report itself.
Just notes that I made in the margins as I was reading it.
Okay, well, we'll talk about those when we discuss it among themselves, okay?
The one comment I have is if you have editorial or grammatical changes, just send them to us directly. The commission doesn't need to spend time discussing those.
I'm going to skip over all of the grammatical stuff.
Yeah, the idea is that, the planning commission shouldn't be writing a sentence.
I just want to drop a footnote. You referenced, what is this? I can tell you that I've learned from my wife who works in a large organization that below a certain adult age level, people want to see visually, they don't want to read. And so this is a visual attempt to depict the preponderance of input. And it's designed solely as a generational matter reflecting our sort of social media age.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I would like to thank everybody for coming. We'll be back here in 2 weeks. Please tell your friends, your neighbors, your relatives, your babysitters, whatever, please come. Give us your comments. And as I said, we won't make any formal actions until we've heard from everybody. And please remember, we're all on the same team here. We're looking to achieve the same goal. Thank you for coming, and hopefully we'll see you in 2 weeks again. Thank you.
Angelo?
Yes.
Sorry, we do have another item on the agenda next
I know.
week.
Oh, next week.
Yes, or not
Okay.
next week, but at the next meeting. So we are gonna see that plan first, I think, before we get back to this, so just wanted to let anybody that's actually listening to me aware of that.
Oh, yeah. All right, we have a little bit more business to do, so if you folks want to continue your discussion, you're welcome to use the lobby, and we'll continue on with our meeting.
Thanks, guys. Good seeing you.
Can I just say really quickly?
Yes.
I can sometimes come across as quite hostile when I know you're doing these things, and I definitely don't mean it personally at all.
I appreciate your
But I
thoughts.
definitely try to protect my neighborhood as much as possible.
Sure, thank you, thank you.
All right, we have minutes to approve.
There was no intent to change the
Uh,
lot size
I'll make
there,
a
so I will
motion, we
second, and if it
approve the minutes
was
from our
unclear, it will be
last
clarified.
meeting.
Thank you so much.
A second?
That was the meeting of April 14th, 2022. We have a motion and a second. Anybody opposed? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion approved unanimously. And I'll entertain a motion to,
I move we adjourn the meeting.
that's the word. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? No? Thank you.
Wait, sorry, who thought you, I'm sorry. Okay. Lou? Lou? Wait, who seconded? Lou? Lou, okay, thank you.